The second half of the 9 to noon presentation on this Wednesday. Welcome back. I'm Paul Allen. Earlier this week, right when we got to the Combine, we were afforded the opportunity to sit down with new Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, with the Vikings for nearly a decade and a half, most recently as offensive coordinator, and now Kevin is head coach of the Cleveland Browns. PA in charge, feasting with Kevin Stefanski, beginning with Kevin. How's Cleveland?
Cleveland's good. Excited to get my family out there and moving out there with the kids and all, but just really getting a lay of the land. It's an impressive fan base. I can tell you they're passionate about their Browns, so it's been fun kind of getting around the place and meeting a bunch of our fans.
So when you somebody took you to a Cleveland Cavaliers game, I saw it on Twitter. It's here comes new Browns head coach. What was the reaction like? What was it like mingling with Cleveland fans as not only head coach, but now you're in the public with sports fans?
Well, I'm undefeated, so it's very, very positive right now. Wow. But I'll tell you, and I mean this sincerely, it's an incredible fan base, and I'm coming from an incredible fan base in Minneapolis, but then getting around the people in Cleveland, that they are such big supporters of their Browns. Every morning, my barista at Starbucks, Suzanne, writes a note on the top of my cup, "Go Browns," or "You got this, coach." So I am feeling the love from that group.
Wow, she's a talented barista. If she can get Go Browns into the foam on your latte, that's really
right on the lid.
Oh,
right
okay. All right, just on
that would have been impressive.
That would have been impressive. Tell me what it's like being onboarded as a new coach. Organizationally, what do they do to get you up to speed when you set, your plane lands and you set foot in? What's the onboarding like?
Well, what's interesting for me is my first job with the Vikings, I was the assistant to head coach for Brad Childress. So my office was right next to Brad's office. So I know what year one feels like for that. I know what all the meetings, all the guys that walk in there, and all the things that you got to deal with in football that don't have to do with football, but you're dealing with the media or the community relations or whatever it may be. So I've seen what year one looks like. I had an up close vantage point from that perspective, so I kind of was ready for what that would entail.
What do they do? Somebody sits down and go, all right, you're going to watch all the film from last year. Here are all the people you need to meet. Here's how do you pick your coaches?
Well, I'll tell you, Coach Koob had a great line to me. He said, just remember, it will get done. So what that meant was, hey, make a list and just start checking it off. So I had a couple lists that I was working off of, and hiring a staff is a big part of that. Yeah. Watching the tape of the previous season is a big part of that. So it just took man hours, and I didn't have my family out there at the time, so I was just kind of grinding and getting in early and staying late.
Well, Kevin, off the first-year vibe, you've been to many combines over a decade and a half, right around there. But this is your first one, obviously, as a head coach, where you're running how the interviews go and how you want it to go. So what's that part like here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, luckily we have a really good support staff here. We have a really good front office. Andrew Berry, our general manager, is on top of this aspect of the player evaluation part of this thing. So luckily I get to kind of sit down and observe and chime in when necessary, but I give Andrew and our scouts and our coaches a ton of credit. They're really doing the bulk work of this.
Off per your staff, or per source, per your staff, your defensive coordinator, Joe Woods. He, when you started with the Vikings with Brad Childress, you come in from Philly, 2006. Joe Woods is there with Mike Tomlin. So you guys have known each other forever. He's your defensive coordinator. What do you like about Joe?
Well, we have known each other for forever, it feels like. And what I have a personal relationship with him, and that's important. But what's way more important is he's a great football coach. Not a good one, he's a great one. I just think what he was the impact that he had with that San Francisco team this year, just over the course of time, the work that he's done with the defensive back end, I'm just so impressed with Joe as a coach, and I've gotten to witness it up close and personal. The guy grinds, so I'm just excited that he's part of our group.
This is Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns, former offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings, from the 2020 Indianapolis Scouting Combine, courtesy of Whiting Clinic, LASIK, and Cataract.
Well, you mentioned Joe, but I know I can name at least 5 other coaches on your staff that have got some purple in their blood. So tell me about your decision to work with some of the people that you already know and trust, and coaches you respect.
Yeah, and I think that's important, Charch, in the trust aspect, but it wasn't like I had to go hire 20 people that I knew. That's not important to me. I had to hire the right 20 people. Now, it just so happened Mike Prefer is already there on staff. Of course, I was going to retain Prefer because he's a great football coach. Was able to add Drew Petzing as our tight end coach, Jeff Howard as our defensive backs coach. We mentioned Joe. So I do have a relationship with these guys, and they're all good coaches. But that's maybe the most important thing. So the trust factor is there, but more importantly, from my perspective, is they're men of integrity and they're really good football coaches.
So you get into Cleveland and you've got some big names with big stories that are like headline stories that have come out of Cleveland in the last year that are all things that you're going to have a lot of questions about. Does Odell Beckham want to stay or go? Kareem Hunt, do we keep him or not? He's a free agent. Myles Garrett with the status of his suspension. Greg Robinson is technically still a Brown, although not for long, I'm sure. He may be in jail before long. I think he's probably in jail now, right this minute, as we speak. It's my guess. You got yourself first-year head coach. You've dropped into a lot of headline situations.
Yeah, that's life in the big city. That's the head coach's desk. You never know what's going to come by, and that's what you're here for. You're there to deal with things on a case-by-case basis and understand what you need to do moving forward. But that's what's important for us as we think about all this stuff is we're moving forward. It's 2020. Certainly there's things that have happened in the past calendar year that we'll address. Yeah. But from my vantage point right now, we're going to focus on 2020.
Well, per this time of the year and per the rules and everything, like how many of your players have you met? And we, obviously with the workouts coming up and organized team activities and so on, you will meet them all. But like, how's that work so far?
Yeah, I've tried to reach out to the vast majority of guys via the text or phone call. The guys that are in town have come through and made sure we've talked. The guys that are rehabbing, made sure I get down there and see them in the weight room, wherever it may be. But you are limited in what you can talk about. You can't be talking scheme. You can't be talking about what the things specific to what you're going to be doing on offense, on defense. So really it's more of just getting to know you, and I've made sure that all those guys have my phone number and just encourage them to reach out when the time happens.
Well, Kevin, you mentioned you have broken down and hypercritically looked at things that transpired last year. Baker Mayfield, what did you see and what can you tell you already like?
I mean, Baker's a very talented football player. I mean, he's the first overall pick for a reason. So I'm really encouraged just speaking with Baker and kind of the plan that we have moving forward with him. I think his skill set is so obvious. He's a very accurate passer. He's excellent on the move, whether on schedule or off schedule. So we have a plan for him. I can promise you it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take a lot of work on his part and on our part and putting a scheme together and putting some players around him where we can get the best version of Baker Mayfield.
There's a lot of star power on offense, but quietly the Browns have got some really good players on defense. The cornerbacks, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams. Your defensive line, Myles Garrett's really good.
Got those nice
Olivier
Big Ten
Vernon.
linebackers.
Yeah, there's some real talent on the defensive side. They just don't have sort of the fantasy football star power that the offense has got.
Yeah, you get to coach and oversee defense.
Yeah,
now.
what's that? Yes.
How about Charge going right to fantasy football? Playing right.
We know where my bread's buttered.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, now I was a defensive back in college, so I have an affinity for the defense. Yeah. But listen, every team you can go down the roster, everybody's got players, and that's true. So we got to add a few more to this mix, and then we got to put a system together. But I can promise you, I won't be talking in terms of fantasy points. Sorry, Charge.
No.
But I can promise you that we're going to put guys in position where they can have some success. But to do any of that, it's all going to start with working, and we get to start working with the guys on April 6th.
You're working with Andrew Berry, who you referenced earlier. For listeners who don't know, youngest general manager history of the NFL, 32 years old, general manager. But he was inside the building in 16, 17, and 18. So he's somebody that knows the landscape a little bit. And you've only worked with him now for a little over a month. But tell me what it's been like working with Andrew so far.
It's been great. And Andrew and I go back. Leslie Frazier introduced us, I want to say about 10 years ago, down at the Senior Bowl. Andrew was working for the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
And Leslie pulled him to the side, pulled me to the side, made sure we met each other.
Interesting.
And so Andrew played defensive back at Harvard, really sharp guy, worked with the Colts, worked with the Browns, spent a year with the Eagles this past season. So really enjoying, when you're, as everybody knows, that relationship, that head coach GM relationship, is really important, and we spend a lot of time together day to day, more than our families. But Andrew's just an exceptional person. I think he's got a great plan, and we're working through all that right now, but really enjoying the day-to-day with Andrew Berry.
For here at the Combine, what does Andrew do, and what do you do? What's the division of duties for the Combine in particular?
Yeah, good question. I think Andrew's spending a lot of time with his scouts right now, making sure he's spending a lot of time at the formal meetings, as we call them, and he's really spearheading this effort when it comes to free agency and the draft plan. So he's got a lot on his plate, and I'm going to help him any which way I can.
Now, Kevin, before you became head coach, or even now, with the wealth of knowledge with which you've worked, whether it's Brad Childress, Darrell Bevell, Norv Turner, Bill Musgrave, Pat Shurmur, on and on and on, Gary Kubiak. How much did you tap on those guys into becoming coach, and then now in the early stages?
Quite a bit, and it's all those guys you mentioned, and I know this: I can't do this thing by myself. I have confidence because I have some really good people around me, and I have confidence because I have some really good people I can lean on. I can call Coach Koob, I can call Pat Shurmur, Brad Childress, you name all those guys that have done this job, and they know the pitfalls. They know maybe what they would do again and what they wouldn't do again. So I think it's just really valuable information, and I'm so lucky to be able to lean on those guys.
Now, at this stage of the equation, how much do you know about the division? Because, there's so much that goes into being a head coach, but Lamar Jackson over here, and the Steelers' equity over there, and the in-state rival Cincinnati. Here we are, Combine February, but what do you think of the division?
I think it's like every division in the NFL. There's no easy outs. There's some really good football teams. There's some really good players. There's great coaches in that division. So getting to know it, I could tell you I have a utmost respect for the coaches in our division in the AFC North. So it's going to be a tough road for us, but that's what we signed up for, and I think we're really looking forward to getting to work on April 6th.
Last two for Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
Well, and maybe this is the most important thing to ask. What gives us Stump Mitchell's beard? Oh, my God. That beard is out of control.
That's Livonia Stump Mitchell, I believe is his full name.
That's impressive that you know Stump's first name.
That is impressive.
Stump's a guy I'm really enjoying being around. I didn't really know him well, but we had some mutual friends. Was able to keep Stump there in Cleveland. And the thing I respect about him is Stump is tough now. His guys play hard for him. And now I can't get into the beard technique that he's got going on. It's impressive.
Is there technique to that beard? I don't know.
There must be. It looks pretty cool to me. But just a good guy, and coaches hard, enjoying being around him.
And look at the success he had with those running backs.
Exactly.
Nick Chubb was awesome last year, and then Kareem Hunt just hit the ground running week 9 forward. Yeah,
exactly.
A lot of success.
So in the early stages and throughout the job, I would imagine sometimes you got to take a deep breath, man, because you've just done so much for so long with the Vikings on the offensive side, the right-hand man to Brad Childress, and quarterbacks coach and tight ends coach, and which is an extension of the offensive line, and interim offensive coordinator, then offensive coordinator, and so on. Now it's, knock on the door. Could be somebody from marketing. Knock on the door. Analytics. You're going to get pulled on from so many different angles. You're very composed, and that's one thing of many that's always impressed me about you. But that's part of it, right? You're serving many proverbial masters.
That's the job. It's all-encompassing. I take it seriously. I got some really good people around me where I don't feel like it's got to be me all the time. I can trust the guys and girls that I have working for us. So I just think it's an impressive group that we have there. We're going to try to add to it, but certainly looking forward to getting to work.
We can't go without you touting the identity of fantasy football, or those listening right now who love fantasy football. Doesn't have to be an individual player. The Browns' offense this year, fantasy football worthy, up and down receivers, tight ends, running backs, Baker, the whole thing. Come on, Kevin. Come on.
We just want you to score points, man. You want to score points, we want to score points, right? We're on the same team
here. That helps us too.
Yes, we're on the same team.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Score some points.
It's a little ambiguous.
Right there.
How about inside the 3?
Too early. Thank you.
I'll check in with you around September,
Deal.
Church.
All right.